Happy Monday, everybody. Not as happy as last Monday, unfortunately, for me.
Oh,
Same for Sheets. It sounds like we did not come through like we have been lately. It was a frustrating NFL day. I just can't even, I can't see look down at my phone anymore because I'm having like flashbacks to just seeing who else was injured in the first quarter of yesterday's games. It was just brutal for me. But anyway, happy to be back. Happy to be doing NBA with you, man. How are you doing? How was the rest of the weekend? And what do you think of this slate?
well, I did great. In that I lost exactly $2 in the NFL because one play Deontay Washington was in enough lineups where I was able to survive. But overall, the NFL is rough. But I would like to announce that I was very upset that Malcolm Brogdon, I know we're going to talk about this later, that Malcolm Brogdon was ruled out because I was 100% going to play him. Not because I thought he was a good play, but my son got into UVA on Friday, early decision.
Congrats, that's awesome.
We're all really excited about that. More, yes, he's getting in, that's great, and he's going, but now we don't have to stress it for the rest of the year like so many other people. So I was going to go against my anti-Brogdon stance and play Brogdon, so he got ruled out, presumably to be celebrating the arrival of my son to UVA and pretending he was just injured. But aside from that, I mean, the weekend was, filled with some real good family stuff. And as far as the NFL slate, broke even, which was fine. Again, to be honest, I really don't play the NFL for as much money as I do for the NBA, really. I just don't feel as comfortable with it. And with the NFL, I only play the stuff that's really difficult to win, like the million and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to get to today's slate because I think today's slate's just awesome.
It is an absolutely interesting slate. I'm sure we'll have some news break later. We're filming this in the morning, early afternoon on the East Coast. So beware of news, as we always try to caution you, but we're going to go game by game. Sheets is giving you sort of an outline of his builds over here. You can sort of see some of the players he's interested in.
Well, let's start with this. Let's start with the fact that there was one person or one group of people who completely were asleep over the weekend, especially until last night, and that was the salary makers on DraftKings, because apparently Gordon Hayward is threatening to play today, maybe as many as 24 minutes, although we have to see what's actually going to happen with that. And while FanDuel went up this price to $6,000, DraftKings decided to keep him at $3K, which is obviously the main point of the whole slate is whether in fact he's playing, what his minute restrictions are, and that's gonna shape a lot of the slate. But as we go through it, you'll see in my builds right now, I put him in every build, but that could always change depending on coach speak or whatever. And we'll talk about that, like how many minutes makes him probably a decent GPP play.
I think the real question becomes how many lineups do we really do? Everybody uses the word lock a lot. I don't often lock in anyone in any slate because I play a lot of lineups. When it's a small slate or I'm just playing a small amount of lineups or something, then I lock somebody in. Or in pitchers and baseball maybe. But it's just there's so much variance. It's really hard for me to almost ever lock almost anyone in, with a few exceptions. And there are some exceptions where it happens in basketball. But Hayward is a guy who would be a good candidate for that, assuming that he plays 25 minutes tonight. But anyway, we'll get to that later on.
My overall view of the slate, again, this is going to be the ultimate. I need BobbyFi badly to make this whole thing work because there's not one or two games that I'm really focusing on stacking. I think there are a couple of games that I could stack if I could find the right players on the other side of the game to put in. And so the way I'm building right now, I have 5 or 6 games that I'm looking to stack, although I can't quite figure out how. And I'm probably going to end up with another build where I maybe just have 1 or 2 from like 4 different games or something like that in there. So it's going to be really interesting to build up my not random player pool, my player pool above and beyond what the projections say, above and beyond what's popular to kind of make all these builds work. So I'm really looking forward to this review.
Yeah, man, this is going to be a good one because I feel really ready for this. I don't know if it's because of the rough weekend, but this is like I think it's a really interesting slate, and I think we'll go through game by game because
all right. Well,
I see some stack spots,
fun.
but I do want to talk. Like, I do think that there's a good. This could be one of those other slates where you might just put together your best lineup and be able to get away with it, because there are so many guys who are going to be low owned because the number of great plays and low prices for, while there might not be other extreme value than Hayward, everybody in like the 7 to 8K range, every player, and not a joke, I think is underpriced except for one. And there is a lot of them. So let's get into it.
Okay, so the first game, we'll go through the same thing. I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and then how we can apply that. Mm-hmm. So in the first game I have is the Clippers, Indiana. So first things is that I am presuming that Kawhi is out only because
he hasn't played it back-to-back. Why would we assume he'll play?
Right, he hasn't played it back-to-back, which obviously increases the usage of all the other players on the team, right? And also it means that everybody else knows that, which means that the popularity of those players will go up if the salaries weren't adjusted to compensate for that, right? That's just general theory. So with that said, the guys you're going to find popping are, Lou Williams, Paul George, and they are popping okay. Not, to be honest, not off the charts, but they're popping pretty nicely. And again, you're going to have to separate who are the better owned, who are the lower owned of a lot of guys that Bobby was saying fit the same kind of mold, like these 7, 8K guys who look just awesome. The other two guys that I put in, just kind of like guys that are going to whatever. Again, JaMychal Green, just because he's 3,500. And he's going to be looking okay. If you need another big value piece, which you probably won't, but he's someone to consider. And there's Montrezl Harrell, who's always just kind of that kind of guy who's going to project just kind of okay. Again, the narrative thing to think about, again, he's played there a billion times since him, but Paul George is returning to Indiana, which, where he used to play. On the, on the Indiana side, last I heard, there was an announcement that Malcolm Brogdon was back.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to play.
He says, I'll play. So I'm going to just reiterate, again, my just overall macro look of Malcolm Brogdon. This is just for the people that haven't been here before, is that, he's hasn't reached, in my opinion at least, hasn't reached that type of ceiling game justifying these prices since all these guys have returned, and a lot of his projections are being used, averaging in results back from when he didn't have a full lineup. So I would be careful about playing Brogdon, regardless of how he projects right now, just because I just don't think the projects have caught up to what his I would say new role is, but what his adjusted role is with everybody healthy. Needless to, however, Sabonis and Brogdon still are projecting to be decent to good plays. Again, factoring in the matchup, it's already in the projections. Those two look to be all right. And the guy that I want to ask you about, if you were going to play a little more of this game than some people, is a guy that you actually got me on a couple of games ago who didn't work out so well, but whatever. And I was wondering what you thought of him, is Miles Turner at center. And, this was not going to be one of those games I was going to stack, just because you have to pay a lot for the people that you want to stack also. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about this game?
So I'm very interested in Paul George as of right now is one of my higher owned players. It's not just the narrative thing. First of all, he was terrible his first time back in Indy, I think, and a lot of people were joking about how he had no revenge, whatever. I think next time he put up like 70 or something against Indy, so whatever. Take it for what it's worth. The fact is he's 7.8K. We're not going to have Kawhi, and I just have a really hard time seeing him with less than 40 points on a road game here. This should be a close game. It seems like to me a spot where I would expect him to be in the 50 plus range fantasy point wise, or at least be right around there. And I think he's just a phenomenal play. Right now, I had him originally programmed in as my highest owned player. I have him currently at 35 to 50%, somewhere in that range is where I want him. I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is, but I really like him. I don't mind any of the other guys. I'll give them all a little boost. So maybe if you want to play, like if you're playing a lot of lineups, you play 10% of Beverly, Harrell, and Williams, preferably separate, I guess, or together with Harrell. It doesn't matter. But I don't really want to get into stacking against good defensive teams, which both these teams are. But I do think if you're going to run anybody back, for me, it's Sabonis, and it's just, again, 7.8 in a spot where I see him in the 40 to 55 range. like almost all the time. That's the one spot where you can beat the Clippers is with post bigs. It's an area where he should be able to have a decent spot. So if you wanted to play like a PG and a Harrell along with Sabonis, or even if you want to throw Beverly in and probably reaching there, that's where I would go. I think I'm going to be lower on Brogdon. I think I'm going to be like maybe around 5 to 10% of him. I just like other players. I mentioned that everybody in the 7K range is underpriced. I think Brogdon does project fine, but we're going to get into some guys who are just, I think, much, much better plays in the 7K price range. And I would prefer to go to the Sabonis route and where there's safety, but also a little bit of ceiling. And I would prefer to go the other route. I actually think there's a lot of ceiling from Sabonis with Paul George. So it is an interesting game. Lots of good spots in this slate. Not the best situation because of the defense, but I think overall those are the pieces that you want to try and get some of, especially Paul George.
You know what's interesting? I think about this slate, and I know that some sites or whatever, they try to project like what kind of slate it's going to be, meaning what type of guys you're going to need on this particular slate to win, given the way things are shaking out. And I think that's very interesting to think about in terms of this slate, because where normally I would say something like, we'll take a safe Brogdon or a safe Sabonis to put him in or whatever. I think that if Hayward plays, given the access that he's going to provide to so much salary, that I don't think you're going to be able to get away with those kind of safe plays today. You know what I mean? I just think that we're in some situations you could play, 3 or 4 lower owned guys with big ceilings, with big variance, and get away with 3 or 4 kind of chalky, safer type plays. Forget the chalk, but the safer type plays. I just have a feeling that especially in the tournaments that, have like 150 entries in them, that you're just going to have to find ceilings out of like 6 guys somehow. You know what I mean? I don't know. Again, this is just my own view of today's slate,
Maybe I look at it and I see a bunch of guys in the 7 to 8K range that I feel like all have like 60 fantasy point upside easily.
Yeah.
So I want to go. I like that route. I do think Miles Turner is interesting. He's been so passive on the offensive end. It's kind of becoming hard for me, but I just feel like that monster game is coming. I like this matchup line for him too. I don't think I would want to play him and Sabonis together on a different slate. I might even, because he's so cheap, but he's the other guy you could sort of maybe throw in if you want to throw PG on the other side. Again, it's going to be PG. I don't see myself playing a whole lot of this game without playing Paul George. So that's just sort of where I'm at.
Yeah. And again, as we go forward, again, I'm thinking about the whole format of the slate and stuff. And how do you get that kind of ceiling? I think there's 2 ways to approach it for me. I am going to probably have to find there's 2 ways. I'm going to have to either play the full stack approach, meaning, play a game, hope it gets to overtime and all your guys hit, or like baseball, or do the other baseball thing, just hope you get lucky and everybody you pick to get solo home runs all get solo home runs. You know what I mean? Which is almost impossible.
Yeah, or you could just do the mini back thing. Right. Playing Paul George and Harrell, maybe, or maybe just Paul George and Sabonis, or just Paul George and Turner. Seems like a pretty good route to me. I mean, you can get 100 fantasy points from 2 of those guys. You're in great shape.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead to the Cleveland-Boston game. And I alluded to this one a little earlier. I mean, the main point is that, that Gordon Hayward at 3K on DraftKings, if you have to, I think you have to come up with some kind of contingency plan in that, not a contingency plan, because the news on this is going to be out before lock, I presume, or at least close enough. And I don't know what kind of organization Boston is as far as announcing minutes and things like that. But if they announce, obviously if they announce no minutes restriction and he's like a full go, I hate to say this, but I think you have to put him in every lineup, regardless of what format. That would be my view. Again, you can try. You can tell me if you would fade something like that. But on the other hand, if they tell me that he's only,
I don't think there's any way he'll play full minutes. I think that's just
right. No, but I'm just putting that whatever. And then let's say that he comes back and the coach says, we're going to limit him to 15 minutes. Okay, so that's interesting. You know what I mean? If they limit him to 15 minutes. That's interesting. Then you start talking about, maybe he's a really, really great cash play, but maybe he's not a, lock in any form in the bigger field GPPs, So I don't, I think that you have to watch your projections and watch how people update things and watch the minutes. because, you're going to have to figure out exactly how much of that to have. So let me go.
This is important. We're missing the most important part of this game is Marcus Smart, whether he's in or out. He was downgraded to questionable with an infection. That's usually an out. That sounds like an out to me. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to, so don't lock that in. If he's out and Hayward plays, I think Hayward would be around mid 25 minutes or so. I think he's going to play about 24 minutes or 20 some odd minutes. You're not going to play him like 15, I don't think. So right. I think, yes, if he plays, it's going to be hard to fade him. I think you can make an argument for doing so in some GPPs if other value opens up, or if you want to go with a completely different type of middling build. Because, we saw what happened. Ish Smith went off and the 12x value, and you won a tournament without Ish Smith that night. So let's remember that we don't have to do everything. I do think that the interesting part of this game, I really hate this game. In general, I would just want to cross it off. I would be really worried that it stays close, especially with what happened to Cleveland the other day. However, that maybe they actually want to man up and try and play. If Kevin Love plays, he's 6,400. He's always played well against the Celtics. I think this is just you got to take a shot here. If Kevin Love's a go, one of these days you're going to see that he could 10x this price. It's ridiculous. I think if you wanted to get into arguing for a game stack, you would play a little bit of Kevin Love, a little bit of. I actually think you could play Larry Nance, even if Love plays, because he has been prone to lead games early and he doesn't look quite right. So Larry Nance at 4.6 could be a steal. And then if you want to, if you already have Hayward on the other side, I think you should take a look at a guy like Enes Kanter as a potential in both in a blowout or not. That's the other thing that's crazy about Hayward. He might actually end up getting more minutes because they might want him to play a strict amount of minutes coming back. You know what I mean? It's kind of an interesting spot. So we really have to see about Smart. But if Smart's out, I think everybody gets a little bit of a bump. And if you want to play one guy back with Love, I don't mind that. You're going to have to hope this one stays close, but mostly for me on the Boston side, I'm going to take a shot or two on Kanter if other value doesn't open up, because I think he's another one of those guys. If he plays 20 minutes, he can put up 40 fantasy points, and no one's going to play him. So I kind of like that route, but mostly it's going to be Hayward and Kanter in this game for me if Hayward plays. If Hayward and Smart both don't play, by the way, I do think we have to everybody in the lineup is definitely a guy I want probably 10% of.
Okay. The two guys that I'll just throw in, again, as I've talked about the way I build stuff, just kind of like my random guys that I'll just throw in, even though they might not project that great, but I know they have upside, and just to kind of make things different. Two guys I will consider on Cleveland are just because they always seem to have upside for me is Chetty Osman. He gets minutes every once in a while, and his shots go in. Every once in a while also. He had 3 points in the last game, 36 the game before, 11 before that, and 33 before that. That's my kind of guy. You know what I mean? Just to have him around. And I don't know how Jordan Clarkson's done recently, but again, if you're going to play more of this game than maybe you should, he hasn't really just done much recently, but he's always in my player pool. But as far as guys that I might throw a dart throw with, but Chetty Osman is just a guy that I just always is in my list of players that, he's an upside guy. He's a high standard deviation guy that if he fits the rest of my builds, I'll just kind of keep him in there.
Well, he's definitely an upside guy at 3.7. I love the call. I should have actually mentioned him. He's a guy I think you do want some exposure to because those minutes are pretty much secure for him. Now they lost by 53 in the last game. That's why he didn't play as many minutes. They could get blown out of this one too, but he still, even in that situation, should play in the high 20s. But I think that's interesting. And I also think if Love is out, it gives him a little bit of a boost because they need other guys to take shots a little bit more. Anyway, we'll see on that one if Love's out. But overall, not the most interesting game, but certainly a couple of interesting spots and potentially a lock in Hayward, a guy you're going to want to be more than half of your lineups with if we think he's going to play over 25 and over 24 minutes.
Okay. Next game, the Orlando Milwaukee game. I have not. This is one of the games I was not interested in stacking. I didn't have a lot of opinion on taking multiple players in this game. It's just a very, very difficult game to get a hold of because the Bucks is just blowing everybody out of every single game, and Giannis is, as we discussed, has just been basically playing exactly enough to win. And you could certainly make an argument, that boy, but what if it does stay close? Like, what if he does put up even 32 or 33 minutes? I mean, what if you can get Giannis at 3% ownership on a slate like this?
You
I mean,
think he's going to be low owned?
Yeah.
I don't.
I thought I was under the impression that if Hayward's out, that the ownership would go more towards Harden. But
I think it will go. I think it will, but I think both of them will be in play. Like, I mean.
Okay, so if that's the case, I mean, I just, again, I'm not going to talk you off it, but I think that on this slate, I just want a little more of an upside type situation, and I don't think there's as much upside from Giannis from these 31 minutes than in this matchup than is out there. You know, so I don't know. I mean, look, he is projecting as a good value. His median projection, you know, if you don't need the ceiling, he is projecting look, he's probably going to get 60 points. I mean, or whatever. Even if it's a blowout, he's probably going to get between 50 and 60. But he's just the guy as far as I'm concerned on a slate like this. The other guys, Bledsoe and Middleton, my same comments as before. Middleton's been playing really, really well. He's been playing really efficiently. They have him for 30 minutes or so. He gets 32, 33. It's the upside from that, maybe a little. Again, I'm not too excited about somebody like Middleton on a slate like this. I want a little more juice. And similarly with Bledsoe, it's just not. I don't think these guys are just going to make it today. Orlando, and my initial take on Milwaukee games is to see if I can find a center to play. But the types of centers I want to play are against Milwaukee are usually just the pure type centers that are just going to just be tough and I don't know if I can do the Bamba thing here. I mean, it's only 4,300 and it is a center, so I guess I could see it, but I don't think he's going to be a big part of that pool of players that I talk about. And the only one off here that is any interest for me at all is your man Isaac, and it doesn't really project all that great. So again, on this slate, given the fact that I'm not looking to stack it too much and none of the one-offs look that great, I don't know how much of this game is going to make it into my stuff.
I have interest in only two players in this game, Giannis and Isaac. I think Isaac is a great tournament play every day. I always talk about it. I know you'll get some down games from him. This is a pace-up matchup. It's even though it's against a good team and everything, and they could get blown out. I definitely will have a Giannis Isaac lineup out there somewhere. And I like Giannis. I probably will be around 20% on Giannis. I think that this game doesn't even need to stay that close. Like if it's a 15-point game in the fourth quarter, I think Giannis goes for 60 here most of the time. And I don't know. I think that happens more often for Giannis than it does for Harden, and also a potential blowout game. You know what I mean? It's kind of overall, I think my builds are going to go towards other guys, but I think I'm going to have some Giannis shares for sure.
Okay. Certainly not going to talk you off of it. Next game, Sacramento, Houston. This is actually one of the games that I'm considering doing some business with. So the Houston side, I mean, again, the good thing about it is all the usage is kind of in front of you here. You know what I mean? It's going to be some combination of Capella, Harden, and Westbrook, whichever way you want to go. So my initial thing was I put in Harden and Capella. I'll let you talk me in or out of Westbrook, but my initial thing was to do something with Harden and Capella together. But I would love to hear your opinion after I'm done with this about whether this is even such a great matchup for Capella, because Holmes is pretty active, and it's actually affecting my thoughts on what to do on the other side, because I'm actually thinking of doing some Holmes on the other side too. On the other side of the game, this to me, again, this is all in the projections, but you know what? Hield is projecting me pretty well. He shoots the ball 800 times a game. It's going to be an up-paced matchup. Not to mention that Hield's going to be watching Houston bomb threes. So however many Hield was going to take, he's going to take more. He's going to try to score as many points as he can to keep up in this game. And, they have an unlimited leash with him as far as whether he goes 3 for 20 or 7 for 20. I mean, they just let him just continue loose. So I'm certainly going to run most every Harden lineup back with Hield. And the other guy that I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to gamble on is Bogdan. Okay, he has really not been great as a function, hopefully a function of him not being all that healthy. But at this point, this is what I look at. So I'm looking at a projection. This is what I'm looking at of 23 minutes. Okay. So for me, I mean, there's just nothing but upside from a 23-minute projection. Okay. In a game like this, where God forbid he decides to get in the mood and, you know what I mean, and make some threes and get hot and do whatever, you know, I don't know, I don't want to say low ownership, and maybe he'll get owned because he's 4,800, but he's a guy that in this game I will definitely go back to. And I am not going to go the Corey Joseph route. I could see it, but I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to kind of go with the guys that could score. I would go with Hield. I would go with Bogdanovich. I'm not a Barnes guy, so, you know, we don't have to talk about that. I'm not going to go back to the Bielitsa game from last night. That's just not the way I roll. So I'm going to probably take a couple of shots with stacking this game with Bogdanovich and Hield. And I know it's maybe not optimal to keep them both in, but those are my two big scorers in the game. So I would keep them with Harden and Capella, and I might try to run some Holmes also. And this is going to be one of my opportunities to try to do something. So I'm curious to hear what you think.
Love it. I'm completely interested in like fading or stacking this game. I think I can make a good argument for both. I think that you play Bogdanovich and Hield on one side, you run it back with either Harden or Westbrook, and that's a good enough little stack for me. I don't really want to get too involved. I also like Capella too. I don't mind the matchup at all for him. So those guys I would say I'm probably going to have around 15 to 20% of in my lineups, but they'll mostly be coordinated together because I need this game to stay close, and I think there's a realistic shot of that not happening. Yep. I want to see how Corey Joseph really is. Like he's banged up a little, like, and he played like, I mean, maybe we can get some Farrell minutes, but I just think that I'm not going to touch it. I don't know. I think that I'm leaning the Bogdanovich Hield route, and that's pretty much it for Sacramento for me. And then I'm interested in the three big guys for Houston, and I think that I would give Harden the edge, but like because we might have that value, but I still certainly don't mind Westbrook, even though I don't think I'm prioritizing him tonight at this price. I do like Capella at 7.4 though. He's a guy I think that makes a lot of sense. Another one of those 7 to 8K guys who I think you're going to get 40 to 60 from more often than not.
Okay. Let's go to the Toronto-Chicago game. So this is one of those games where it's not going to be that as big of a problem as some of the others, but this is one of those games where I look at the projections and I look at whatever, and I see that there are, at least two guys on one side, on the Toronto side, actually, that look really, really good, and maybe even a couple of others. I'm presuming, by the way, that Fred VanVleet is going to be out. That's not been announced at all, if you want to know the truth, but he did come out of the game yesterday, hurt, and it's a back-to-back. So for now, I'm presuming he's out. If not, then never mind as far as some of this stuff. But what I'm looking at is, so when I see on the one side, I see like Siakam and Lowry, and even Serge to some extent, looking to be pretty really good plays, and then a couple of cheaper guys like Norm Powell and OG Anunoby. Again, presuming VanVleet is out, I would love to play the other side of this game and stack this a little bit. And then I look at the Chicago projections, and I'm like, well, none of them really look that great. So the good thing about it is that it doesn't matter that much to me, because I know that I'm going to always use Levine in a stack if I'm going to stack Chicago, just because, not to say F the projections, but Levine, I'm looking for ceiling, not median. You know what I mean? So I'm not too worried about that. And I just love to have another guy too. And Carter looks, I guess, okay. I guess I might go Kobe White over Satoransky nowadays. He was apparently given a lot of preference in the last couple of games. They let Kobe close, even though there's nothing wrong with Satoransky. They let Satoransky only play 23, 25 minutes or whatever. And Dunn, again, is not going to be a ceiling type guy for me. And then when I go down to Markkanen, he's been playing well, and it's one of those things where it just projects like such crap that am I going to really make that kind of excuse to bring him up there? Maybe I have to, if I really want to stack this game, or maybe I just don't stack the game at all. You know what I mean? So that's my struggle, is whether to make this a full part of my build. Is it worth it? And, how do I make that happen?
Yeah, I don't think this is a game that I want to stack exactly, but I can put like one guy on one side or something like that. I think on the Toronto side for me, I just think Siakam is another one of those great plays. He's going to probably be in about a third of my lineups tonight. 7,900 for his minutes, and like literally, I feel like I just don't see him putting up less than 40 in this spot. And I don't care about the Fred VanVleet thing. Whether VanVleet plays or not, I want to play a ton of Siakam. I I want some Lowry too, if VanVleet is out especially. But the guys who I'm looking at are they're a little bit, maybe not off the board, but at least as of this moment, I don't think people are all over him. Marc Gasol at 4.8, like against a team that can't rebound in Chicago. I just could see him having one of his bigger games. Like it's probably only in the 30s that he gets, but like he's 4.8, so it's kind of interesting. I don't love it, but it's just something I wanted to throw out there because I think people will play some Ibaka. When in fact we think Gasol is probably going to play more minutes, and realistically probably has about the same ceiling, maybe more even, probably about the same. Anyway, just an interesting guy who if other value, if we want some extra value, you can go to. But
that's pretty strange. Again, like it's funny when projections in the eye test are so different. So, I look at Marc Gasol and Serge, and they have the exact same price, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, they project for similar minutes, and they have Serge projected as to be that, to project for higher points. I guess I always had the idea. Again, this is just that Gasol was, hashtag better, but I guess not. I guess he's not. He's more an offensive guy than an offensive guy, I guess.
I mean, it just depends on. He's not the same guy he used to be. He just doesn't have the same energy. And also, he had a long off season. They had to go play in the World Champion. Like this is a lot of work.
Hey, and if you want a research type play, like if you want to really, really dig in, I don't really have the patience for it right now. But if VanVleet is out, if you want to just really research rotations and stuff like that, if you want to, another 3,200 guy, and maybe Terrence Davis might be some guy who sneaks in some minutes or something like that. I don't know. I started to look at it, but I didn't really have the patience for it. But if you do hear, you could find some excuse why Terrence Davis would get like 24 minutes, maybe a $3,300 punt for him. Again, only because I was looking at it. Do I even bring it up? I don't even know if you even thought about it.
Yeah, I thought about it. Maybe a 5% shot, depending on how many minutes I expect him for. I'd have to wait to get the actual VanVleet news and just see how projection systems land. I'd like to sort of go through all of them after that.
All right.
But yeah, I think it's a good call.
Okay, next game is a game that I really desperately need your help. Okay, so Detroit at New Orleans, right? So you look at this. Okay. Yeah, so you look at this. It's a again, this is all on the projections, but it's a 227-point total. It's a 1-point spread. Okay, and because New Orleans is playing. Again, I'm saying the same thing 3 times, right? It's going to be a fast-paced matchup. That's why it's a 227-point total, whatever it is. So instinctively, I would really love to play some of this, right? So here's the issue. So I look at the New Orleans side, and I see 3 guys that just pop through the freaking roof, right? I see Ingram, Ball, and Holiday, okay? All 3 of them. Now, again, I could do what I did the other night, and I could play ball with one of them and hope, and not rely on both Holiday and Ingram getting off those kind of shots. Or I could play all 3 of them, or I could filter Redick in, or I could go with Kenrich Williams or something like that. Seeing what happens with Favors. We could do other stuff. But here's my problem. My problem is what to do with Detroit if I were going to stack this game, okay? Because I look at it, yeah, Andre Drummond, the same. He projects okay, same as always. But what I'd love to know from you is what type of guy, we talked about this last week, when Phoenix was playing New Orleans, is while everybody projected well, I wanted to think about which player actually benefited more from that pace up than the other guys. Like for me, Andre Drummond is just, he's just Andre Drummond. Okay, he just doesn't matter. I want to know which Detroit guy is going to possibly benefit from a ceiling projection higher from this up-paced matchup than the other guys. I mean, I threw Derrick Rose in just because, right? And I wanted to get your opinion on number one, this game. And number one is, what else can you do except for, maybe Blake Griffin? I don't know what it is. So tell me how I would, because if you can give me excuses to play these Detroit guys, I would love to do this.
Okay. Here's some excuses for you.
Go for it.
Blake Griffin is I think is the guy who benefits in this particular situation.
Beautiful.
I think that he at 7.2, we haven't seen that ceiling game out of him yet, but should be a really good spot for him. I actually think that the uptick, I don't think, and Drummond can play in up-pace matchups or not or whatever, but I think maybe playing at that pace, you could argue like it favors Griffin maybe, especially in this type of matchup, because they don't have anyone to match up with Drummond, but I don't really want to pay. I mean, it's not that I don't like Drummond. I just don't want to pay 10.1K for him when I could pay 9,300 for Cat. I like Blake. That's where I'm at. I think that the other guy who it feels gross, but Luke Kennard just in terms of a matchup grades out really, really well here. Like he should get open looks all over the place. I don't like it. It's probably the wrong slate. I'm just going to mention that he's like a guy I might throw into like 5% of my lineups or something just as a tournament play. Because I do think that he could hit a ceiling type of game. The problem is it's not even that exciting of a ceiling. And I feel a little bit similarly about Derrick Rose, unless they just turned it over to him and let him play all the minutes, which I wish they did. But I don't think that's going to happen. So for me, it's going to be Blake Griffin on that side. On the other side, I mean, that's the number one. Oh, the other long shot tournament play is Markieff Morris if other value doesn't open up, or maybe if Hayward's out. He's 3.2. It's probably worth taking a little shot on, but I wouldn't go crazy with it or anything like that. They've played him with Blake and Drummond a couple times, though, so I do think that it is viable. Anyway, on the other side, I love Brandon Ingram. I think that I don't see what is not to love about him. I think he's one of the better guys here. The problem I have is that all these guys are back, and I don't think playing all three is probably optimal against Detroit because it's not like they're getting a pace bump, although Detroit actually has been a little bit more up-tempo than they have been in the past. Lonzo at this price, Drew at this price, Favors if he plays at this price. They're all priced well, and even Kenrich Williams is going to get minutes at 3.5. Everybody on this team is just priced to where they make sense. I don't think you want to get all of them together and stack it. For me, it's probably going to be a two of the guys, maybe a Drew and an Ingram, or a Habal and an Ingram, or a Ball and a Holiday, and something. Maybe I would even throw in another guy like a Favors or a Kenrich if I needed the value and ran it back with Blake. But for the most part, the guys who I'm prioritizing in this game are going to be Brandon Ingram, Lonzo, and Holiday. I just don't know if it'll all be together. I do think all of them I should have at above 25% if I wanted to give someone a feel for where I'm at right now.
Yeah, this is gonna work. You know what I mean? It's just gonna work. I'm gonna probably end up doing one of my builds is gonna involve exactly something like this. You know what I mean? Like you take Ball, and again, this is just my theory of the way correlations work, right? I mean, again, this is not, if this were 100% settled, everybody would do it, right? So
Right.
so I would try not to play Holiday and Ingram. I would not try to play Holiday and Ingram in the same lineup just because I think that they get the same type of action. You know what I mean? I would probably try to play Ball with Holiday and Ball with Ingram. And like you said, filter in, if we're going to play three of them, get a little more value in there. So maybe put Kenrich Williams, or depending on what happens if Favors is out, maybe Jackson Hayes, you have to play again. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, who's going to, you have to have somebody play all these minutes against.
Yeah, if Favors is out, I definitely think you look at Jackson Hayes and he becomes this really, really good play.
Yeah. All right, good. So that's and Kennard is someone but Blake Griffin, maybe that's the idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe he's the guy that gets that, the fast pace bump, and that might be the way to do it.
But if Favors is out also, it does help all the other guys too. Like it's just a little bit extra usage to go around. All right. Yeah. I think it's a good, interesting spot. I really like some of those points. I just don't love the Detroit side as much as I wish I did.
Exactly. That's my problem. That's my same issue.
So that's where maybe we take two guys and we just leave Detroit alone, or we just play Blake.
Okay.
All
right. What's the next game here? The next game I had was
I think we got Minnesota Phoenix.
Right. Okay. So Minnesota Phoenix is another game which I would like to do some business in. Right. So once again, it's no surprise, the 230 total. It's going to be, you know what I mean. You got semi-close spread, and you know where the use is going to come from. So why not take a look at it? So what I did originally was, okay, so I looked at the projections, make sure it checked out, and I saw, all the normal guys I've been playing for Phoenix look great. Oubre, Rubio, and Booker. And then on the other side, projections-wise, Towns looked really, really good, and Wiggins just kind of looked okay. So just the first thing I did was I said, okay, let's just start with Rubio, Booker, Oubre, run it back with Towns, have Hayward plugged in, and you could just kind of rock the house. I happen to have put Covington in here just because he was another guy, but I certainly think this is, given that, that's the thing, given the fact that Hayward is so easy to play, presuming he's easy to play, it lets you do stuff like this where normally it'd be hard to get Towns and Booker and these guys in there and make good lineups. But I think today it's kind of easy. So I think that Towns, he didn't have kind of just an okay game yesterday. So he, despite him being on a back-to-back, he could be, he's obviously motivated, but so it's a good matchup. Everything's a good matchup for him. He always has a ceiling. And Booker, as we know, always has a ceiling. I think that these guys all correlate decently. I don't think Rubio and Booker really take that much from each other. And Oubre, again, he just has a different type of usage than these other two guys. So I think that I'm going to go right back to this.
I mean, I think that they can take away from each other a little bit, but it doesn't have to be. But I love everybody against Minnesota, so I can't argue on any of those points because I probably want to try to be like a little bit ahead of the field, which I don't think will be. What's interesting about this game is with this total, I still don't think anyone's going to play Phoenix because of the pricing. And I think that you got to take like a shot on one of these guys in some of these lineups where you play Cat. Like, I think Oubre would be the least interesting to me, but I'm okay with him too. I prefer Rubio and Booker as my top two. I don't love the price on Saric. I wish he was a little cheaper. Otherwise, I would include him in this mix. I think Booker is like a really good tournament play because we know the ceiling, and this is the kind of matchup where I could see him just getting off.
I have Baines back, by the way.
Yeah, I think Baines is back.
Okay.
But I mean, Saric is still going to play. Like that doesn't affect it. A little revenge for Saric anyway. No. But we saw what happened in a similar type of situation. Like obviously they don't play quite as fast as New Orleans, but Minnesota doesn't play defense either. And we saw Rubio and Booker go off. Obviously that game went into overtime, so that helped out. But they were going off in regulation too. So and again, so did Oubre, I believe, in that game.
Everybody did their thing.
So this might be one of those spots where maybe you do play two of them and then run it back with Cat, with some of the other value you've got. You could run other 1v1s. I think it's an interesting way of building today. I like this game a lot more because I think the ownership's going to be low. So my goal right now is to try and get ahead of the field on all the Phoenix guys that I consider in play, which are really just the top three, I guess, because with Baines coming back, it just sort of muddies everything else up. But I do have a lot of interest in those three. And then I think that if you're going to take a guy like Cameron Johnson and take shots on him, like this would be the matchup you would do it. I just don't know if it's the right slate to do it. So probably not going to do it for this one, but this would be the kind of matchup where I wouldn't be surprised if Cameron Johnson hit 4 or 5 threes.
Yeah, he's been getting some good run. I wonder if Baines back in some way, even though he's not the same exact position, takes a little of that away. But
yeah, I think it's probably the wrong time, but I think he's a heat check guy. Like if he's hot, he might be on the court to close the game. You know what I mean? So I really like the Phoenix guy. I like the problem with the Phoenix is it's just going to be more spread out than usual, which is why no one's going to own them. So I prefer it as taking shots on one or two of them, but I think in one lineup, but I think that you could make an argument that trying to run all three and just hoping for the ceiling with Towns on the other side is a way you could go.
Okay. Actually, what's the next game I have? Oh, I skipped the OKC game, right?
That's all right. It's the same thing, same time.
Okay, but wait a minute. So I actually had some interest in this game, which is like really annoying. So it's a similar type of situation. So I look at the OKC Utah game, and again, I look at the total, but I don't really look at it too much because that all is going to be baked into the projections and stuff like that. And I see that the three main Utah guys, again, I'm presuming that Conley's still out, is the three main Utah guys, Mitchell, Gobert, and Bogdanovich. They project really, really well. So when three guys on one team project really, really well, from a value perspective, I think about ways to maybe stack the game if possible. And then I go to the Oklahoma City side and I want to kind of throw up a little bit. You know what I mean? So I look at the Oklahoma City side. Nobody projects really, really well. Even my usual upside play that I'll play sometimes, Schroeder has been priced up to 6,300 from 5,500, and this is no great matchup either, so that's why he's not projecting well. And these other guys like Shea, I don't really like playing him in general, and so it's kind of a tough thing for me to do to run back, Utah side, which doesn't look that great, but it look good. If I can't find something I'm that excited about on the OKC side, which of course, you could always say, well, that's great. They'll be 0.5% owned, so who cares? But I would like to have at least some confidence in what I'm doing. So I did put this as a potential build, but unless you give me a real reason to do it, this is probably not going to make it into my main builds.
Yeah, I don't see any reason. I don't want to get into this game. Like, really, I understand. Like,
Beautiful.
But I do really like two individual plays. I think Donovan Mitchell is another one of those guys in the 7 to 8K range that I think I expect to have over 40 fantasy points tonight, and I think that it's often over 50 here with even upside on that. I feel the same way about Rudy Gobert. So those are guys who I just, even with the potential blowout risk, because I do worry about this for OKC going on the road back to back. Like this could be interesting. We didn't mention that about Teague, by the way, in the other game. We should wait to see about Teague in Minnesota because it's a back-to-back and he's still got that ankle injury. So if Teague's out, we got to play Shabazz Napier, but that's going back to the last game. But yeah, in this game, it's just going to be Mitchell and Gobert for me.
You do? You have to play Shabazz Napier?
You don't have to, but that's what I'm going to do. I mean, I'm assuming that he's the one who's going to get the minutes. And then also Wiggins becomes more interesting a little bit. Jarrett Culver, a little more interesting, but probably not enough to play. It just would open things up. And if Shabazz was starting, I think that, yeah, you got to play him.
Well, let me ask you this. So Shabazz Napier's 3,100, right? So is he enough of a play where you would use him as a pivot off of Hayward or not really? I mean,
I don't know why you wouldn't be able to use both of them for the most part.
Or play them both. Right.
Yeah. That's sort of what I would do. But again, you don't have to play Shabazz. I think Hayward's the better play, but I think Shabazz is probably a little closer than we think and also has probably a higher upside, which sounds really crazy to say, but just in terms of minutes and stuff. So I don't know, just an interesting.
He might actually, even if they announce Napier starts, I mean, this is just my total speculation that he might actually have lower ownership than he might otherwise, because if I'm not mistaken, he busted people pretty hard in the last couple of years, a couple of times when I think he was on the Nets or something.
He also exploded. He had like a 65 fantasy game or something. He went nuts. Everybody got off of him, and it was one of those beautiful days for me where I just got to plug him back in again.
Okay. So again, everybody, you got to watch for this because this one is going to be a 9 o'clock or whatever game. So or whatever that Minnesota game is, 9 o'clock Eastern. So if you do get Teague news, that may happen not until after lock. So unfortunately, you're going to have to kind of be on top of what's going on. Now, is this going to be one of those Tyus Jones situations, Bobby, where you play Napier on FanDuel or not really?
I would probably take a shot. Yeah. Okay. If I would have to read a little more. It's early in the day to figure out exactly what happens. I don't even know about the shoot around today or if they even did a shoot around because they played yesterday. So I just need to find out a little bit more. But yeah, I would definitely consider doing that if we didn't know.
Okay. So I guess the last game, right? So the last game is Memphis and Golden State. And this is another game I have a lot of interest in doing some business with. So D'Angelo Russell was back in his last game. I honestly don't even know how he did. I don't really care. But if both him and Green are both playing, which I presume they are, I really have interest in this game. I want to play both Russell and Green on Golden State. I don't want to play any of the other guys. And my issue, that big of an issue, is what to do on the Memphis side. Because, again, these guys project okay. Russell projects really well. Green, whatever. But, again, as we discussed the other time, he's projecting as a break-even value median-wise. But, I don't really care what his median is.
We know the ceiling, yeah.
Yeah, so you look on the other side. Nobody on the Memphis side projects that great. But, I'll tell you that presuming that he's healthy enough to play, I will totally play Morant. I will totally take a shot if he's still at Dylan Brooks. Maybe I'll take a shot at Joe Val if I could put him in, or Jaren Jackson Jr. I definitely would love to play some of this game if I can. So I would love to hear your opinion on this one.
I think it's an interesting game. I don't have a ton of players that I have at huge ownerships, but I do think it's an interesting mini stack, and I like the idea of. I mean, it's not really mini, I guess, but if you played Draymond and Russell to maybe throw a Morant Joe Val or a Morant Triple J lineup in, I think that's a really, really high upside, very, very low floor play. That is not something that I would do as a staple, but I think it's a phenomenal tournament play. I think that Joe Val actually is in play in all formats of everything. He doesn't, if he's a good to go. And also what I like about this game is we talked about so many things we might have to wait for. The later games you play, I mean, even yesterday in football was a great example. I mean, the only reason I even got half of my money back was because I switched over to DeAndre Washington, at halfway through the game. The later you play, the bigger the advantage you have when it comes to swaps. And tonight is a night where you're gonna want that. So if you do want to get this game stacked, it makes sense. I think Russell's another one of those 7 to 8K guys that while I don't necessarily expect him to always beat a 40 to 60 here, I think that there's higher than 60 upside. Like I really think it's through the roof. Especially like playing a home game. I just really like the spot, and it's an up-tempo matchup with Memphis. The pricing is going to keep people off of it, so I'm with you, man. It's a good way to go. I will be ahead of the field on it, but I probably am not quite as high on it as you are.
Right. So what I wanted to ask you again, I always like try to filter in, if you have time, just a few questions, or maybe like one or two questions.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed, and this is one of, I don't say my least, but one of the things I really want to work on, especially given my background and all this stuff, is trying to really tailor my lineups to the actual tournament that I'm playing.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question I have for you. So I hear this a lot when people say, well, I like this, but in single entry or whatever it is.
Sure.
What I kind of notice is, and you could, again, this could be either a really beginner question or an advanced question, is that guys that are highly owned, that are whatever owned in like the big field tournaments, in the single entry tournaments, they'll be like through the roof owned. Okay. Mm-hmm. And is that just because, again, this is a stupid 5-year-old question, is that just because people can only put in one lineup? You know what I mean? They have to just pick their best plays. And if that's the case, wouldn't that be the perfect type of tournament to go against what would be the most highly owned type player?
Yes, absolutely. But it's going to be different on single entries because people are playing more of their cash game lineups or more closer to it, which actually is the logical way to go in basketball. I think it makes the most sense to do that. That's what you should be doing. So you want to, for the most part, you're going to want to eat some chalk in basketball, even in your tournament lineup. So it's just about how much you're willing to. Like if you're playing a giant field tournament, you probably are going to try and want a couple guys to 3 at least that are probably 3 that would be less than 10% owned if you can get there. But if you're playing a single entry, you might only need one guy like that, or not even need a guy depending on, if it's a 100-person tournament or something.
Well, again, I was actually trying to think about it more from a game theory perspective. So my idea is that if everybody thinks that and everybody knows that, right, that's why the single entry chalk is that much more chalky than the 3 entry chalk or whatever.
Yeah, what you're saying is exactly what I do in single entries. Like I play I'll play a couple longer shot guys.
Right.
And I've ended up, when I do win single entry tournaments, it's usually by like 25 points.
Right.
Because I'm putting out there a similar to my big field GPP lineup, just for the reasons that you're stating exactly. Although I might eat a little bit more chalk in some other spots, I'm still going to play the wild card guy in a couple of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think that, again, I got to do a little more work on this, and a lot of work is by doing, but I really want to make sure that, I start my builds. Like, let's say, again, I have say 4 builds, like either 3 game stacks and one kind of like, how do I call them? Like a little mini stack build. And then when I deviate from, again, my main lineup will be in the single entries, like maybe 3 or 4 single entries. And also that same lineup, it will maybe a little bit more off the board will be in that spin move. And then as I get down to say the excellent H or something like that, then I'll start to, getting funny, you know what I mean? And doing whatever. And I do think that when you hand building, you can do that. You know what I mean? You can get away with that. And I think, I don't know, like when you play 150 lineups, I just feel as though when you rely so much on the optimizers and the crunchers and what everybody else is doing, I think that, I'm not saying it's not a good use of time, right? Because obviously the hand build 150 lineups is difficult. But if you rely on the crunchers and all that stuff to just spit out lineups, I just feel as though you're not tailoring it properly necessarily to what type of tournament you're in. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that there are other, that it's still not a good way to do it, but I do think that if you can hand build lineups and really figure out, what part of your lineups is chalk, what part is off the board or whatever, that you will have an individual edge over those lineups that are just, automatically being crunched and run by optimizers.
Yeah, I agree with all like, I think that so those are all good points. I think that you could make the argument either way with single entry, whether to be more contrarian or more go with your more popular. I would think it's just like where I put my favorite plays and just mostly, but I will try and find, like, if it's a bigger buy-in, like if it's larger field single entry, like 4,500 person one or something, then maybe you want to try and take a less conservative approach. Whereas if it's the 500 person one, you'd want to just probably play your just favorite plays.
So why don't we do this? Why don't you again like review like your top guys, and then I'll just kind of think about one kind of thing to think about slate wise.
Yeah. So a lot of my top guys are not necessarily off the board at the moment, which I'm okay with because I think that I can find some spots to run contrarian guys back in a few of these games. But here's who I've got and where I'm just adjusting one of the ownerships here. Basically, I'm highest on Hayward, obviously, followed by Siakam and George. I have in the same tier. Just beneath them, I have Drew Holiday, Brandon Ingram, and Karl Anthony Towns, and Lonzo. Those are the next guys. And then just a tier below that, barely, I have Donovan Mitchell, Blake Griffin, Giannis, and Buddy Hield.
What do you have? Not to steal from whatever, but if you had like, do you have like one or two just kind of?
I have a very heavy interest in the first three guys I mentioned: Hayward, Siakam.
No, not that. I mean, you have like one or two guys that are like, don't tell anybody, but
Oh, like way off the board. He's not off the board, but Devin Booker is going to be low owned tonight, and this is a spot where he could go completely nuts. So that's a guy I would think should stand out. I promise you, he's going to be low owned. I'm almost positive. I also think that I think Donovan Mitchell's off the board. I don't think people are going to play him, and it's really weird that they aren't going to. I think that might change by the end of the day. I'm looking at the guys who I like who are let me find a couple guys who are in the really low end side of it. Wendell Carter. There's a high-end upside GPP play without that much risk, and he's going to be literally unowned, completely unowned. And just can absolutely get there for his price. Kevin Love, there's your off the board one. I guess that's the one. I named a few of them, I guess. And Kobe White, another guy, but he's actually not off the board. Kobe White's actually going to get some ownership tonight.
So let me give you guys again a little lesson as far as information aggregation, which again is my main field of expertise, right? It's like finding out what other people think and interlaying what I think on top of it and just coming up with stuff. Like if you run across content, you watch videos, you do whatever, and you hear a couple of kind of off the boardy type things that either don't project well or whatever it is, that doesn't mean that you're like, wow, that's just a great idea. I'm going to lock him into 100% of my lineups because I never heard of him before, and this guy who's hot seems to like him. You know what I mean? But I do think it's a good idea to just be really open-minded about guys that you might not have considered otherwise. Not again, There are optimizers now that force you to randomize, right? They say, hey, you want to randomize? Click this button, you'll randomize. What you can do is you can kind of like randomize yourself, right? By taking a pool of guys that could be okay. Maybe they are. Either somebody else thinks so or there's something weird about them. And you put those in kind of like your whatever that lottery thing is where you spin the wheel, right? And those are the guys you kind of filter in through your lineups rather than just straight up randomizing. You could use that kind of like your pool of people to make yourself different so you don't get too egotistical and set on your own plays. And, yet on the other hand, you don't run into a situation where, boy, I heard XYZ tell me that XYZ was a good play, so I locked him into all my lineups. You know what I mean? So I think just listen to a lot of things and use those as kind of like your kind of like ways to filter through your lineups a little bit.
Completely agree. Anything else, Sheets, before we get out of here? I think this has been a really good show.
Yeah.
And guys, we love your feedback, by the way. Give us the thumbs up and the like. We really appreciate everything. You guys have been really, really kind to us, and we love doing these videos. So we're going to keep the content coming, and the website will be up very shortly. But Sheets, I'll leave it with your final thoughts.
Yeah, again, my final thoughts again is 3 bits of news. One, just make sure you keep an eye on the Hayward minutes if they announce them. Secondly, do not sleep on that Jeff Teague thing, okay, especially after lock. And the third thing, which could be the most interesting, is the news that you don't know about yet, right? Because again, just people, that could go either two ways. People could either really overreact to it, or they could just forget about it. You know what I mean? So again, you just be on the lookout. NBA in a 10-game slate or however big the slate is, the law of averages dictates it's just something's going to happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. So just be ready.
Yeah, and feel free to hit us up on Twitter about any late news questions. I'm at BobbyFi. He's at Sheets PWNS, SAGETS PWNS. And just do me a favor when you do that. Just don't DM me. Do it publicly. It makes it easier so that way I don't have to answer quite as many of the same questions for people.
And do me a favor. Don't do that for me because I won't see it. But maybe in the future I'll be able to see it and respond. Okay. But I'm learning.
All right. I understand. But we're giving the people good information anyway. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you. We will talk to you shortly. For Sheets, I'm BobbyFi. We're out of here.
Okay.